so that anybody in the public would like to make a comment. Please come forward, state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Sherry Gallagher. I live at 119 Spartina Court. It's very frustrating for the public not to have the information from the Planning Commission. We don't have the minutes, we don't have the agenda, we didn't have today's agenda coming in today. You're really far behind and the community has you guys under a microscope right now. So, yes?
All the materials are all online. Dr. Heidingsfelder, who is one of the council members, has instructed me to not print anything for the public packets except for the agenda, and if that should be then addressed to him.
I think Sherry's point,
talking
though,
about the minutes.
we received everything yesterday, which is our rules of procedure say we're supposed to have it and it's supposed to be posted 7 days ahead. That's a problem. We didn't get it till yesterday.
And there's,
We received all of the material except for one item a week ago.
I didn't.
Before it was all sent, before the meeting was canceled or postponed. Yesterday, we got the revised copy.
I
You
never got-
commented on it.
I never got the
You
original.
sent your comments in on it.
I sent my comments in on the comp plan, but I never got an agenda or anything for last week's meeting.
It was all sent.
Actually, I was at a meeting with Larry. He said he got it, and Ron and I said we didn't.
I got it.
and we are just today reading the minutes of the October 19th meeting, and there were significant votes taken. The community's talking about who voted for what at those meetings. So I think it's important that we get that information out.
Yeah, I do too, Mrs. Gallagher. I want to make sure I get your clarity is that Dr. Heigensfelder has instructed you not to, but to put it online a week in front.
Well, I put it online as soon as I get it from John, but if you notice the town council packets, do not come in packets.
So, let me,
The agendas, that's all that we're trying to
Patriot.
kind of go greener. So I do not print any public packets. I
Mr.
just
Chair.
print the
Okay,
agenda.
well, let me ask Mrs. Gallagher, if you're saying you want it printed, or would you like it on the, it's okay if it's on the website if it's a week in advance?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would like to have the minutes of the prior meeting sooner than 3 months post.
So would we.
So would we.
Mr.
The only thing there is, I have 8 sets of minutes to get done for these meetings, and the town council meetings are 3.5 hours long. So those take up an enormous amount of time. I'm doing them as quickly as I can do them.
Maybe you need some help.
I cannot say anything about that.
Let me, John?
I can address all those things, but I want to keep us on track if any additional
Okay.
public comments.
Okay, any additional public comments? Okay, all right. Next agenda item is the Kiwa Next Update. Mr. Taylor, would you take us through those? Oh, let me set this up for you. Let me do this up, okay? Basically, okay, this is a week or so. We've got the draft of the Kiwa Next on December 16th, I think it was. And there was talking with several members of the town, or the planning commission. And we were all surprised that what we thought some modifications and changes that we had recommended during the process had not been, or were not included in the draft that we got in the middle of December. So I asked John, I asked Mr. Taylor, why those changes had not been made and not reflected in the most recent draft. And John said that he had asked at the end of the September meeting, which was the base for those for that document, for the Planning Commission members to provide changes and comments to him so that he could update that, and he said he hadn't received any. My feeling was that there was a misunderstanding on the process. Members of the Planning Commission have shared with me that they thought as we were making these suggestions that the consultant was going to incorporate those recommendations in revised documents. And John and the consultant were waiting for a formal, some sort of written formal for the comments or the changes, recommendations in a formal written form. So, so we decided to pull together, and a lot of work was done by the commission members to go back through that base document, which is the September 16th document with none of the changes that we thought were going to be in there, and provide those changes to be included in an updated version, which John had indicated was going to be a clean version. Subsequent to that, we understood, we were informed that the head of the consultant who was working with us on the Kiowa Next program was no longer with the company and no longer going to be part of the process. So what we are doing here today is, first of all, we should have an updated version which reflects all the changes that have been requested by the Planning Commission. And what we want to do is when we get the newly assigned consultant to sit down in a working session and where we can review the base document, the changes, and come together with what we feel is a better reflection of where the Planning Commission feels that the Kiowa Next should be heading. John, anything you want to add to that?
No, that was really great, Mr. Chair. The only thing I would note is where we are today in sort of assessing our next time together and the recommendations that staff would have for the Planning Commission and moving forward from today. And so as part of this, you have an edited version of the most comprehensive plan overview, that working document that we've started with. As you recall, at the end of last year when we did meet last, this document was revised to reflect now under the organization of our different elements. And so now, moving forward, I would like to recommend that we break the commission down into smaller working groups to focus on the different sections of the comprehensive plan so that we can move a little bit quicker in getting to what I would call a finish line. So that sort of process would entail us working with our consultant team to first, as you just referenced, get a baseline understanding of what I would call a reset, working with a new person to make sure that that person has you guys' expectations and moving forward. And then as far as timeline of what I've outlined, the beginning of this month, next month, we will have a draft produced. Primarily in the month of February, begin to engage the public in a more robust engagement session to make sure that they are comfortable with the document. And by our March meeting, hopefully we have something to be able to recommend. Want to be able to move this fairly quickly. The big thing I want to ask today as part of this session is that I will highlight each of the elements really from a very high level, but the overall goals and objectives was the concerning part to me, to make sure the goals and objectives that are listed are in line with the expectations of where we want the vision of the town to go as far as a comprehensive plan.
Right. So could you, I asked you, how are we doing relative to the state requirement to update that plan? I mean, the question is, are we under a time pressure here?
So we would still meet our state requirements. So based on the state's statute, there's a 5-year review and a 10-year update. This particular process began originally as a review, but we have transitioned that to a full update of the comprehensive plan. So this still falls within that. Our comprehensive plan that is currently enacted was officially approved in 2015. That means technically we have 10 years to 2025 to fulfill that execution of our 10-year update. our 5-year review does not have to happen every 5 years. The Planning Commission can make reviews to that periodically. And so we made substantial updates in 2018 and 2019, if you recall, regarding resiliency immediately after the flood mitigation and sea level rise report was done. And so those were the immediate sort of significant changes as far as conditions to the island at the time that had addressed our 5-year sort of review. So we still are in line, in bounds of meeting our 2025 absolute deadline for this particular. And I would also add that even the state also gave COVID years as part of that as well. So I think we are significantly covered as far as our meeting the requirements at the state level.
John,
John,
can you
just for
give us?
clarity, there's no reason, I mean, our due date is in 2025. Is there a month in 2025 or just any
hard
time in
date.
2025?
So this was, this officially was adopted, I believe, in September. That would be in September, 10-year mark from the adoption date.
So we should have to be finished a couple of months in advance so the town council can have their first and second reading and adopt it. Is that right?
Correct.
So September 2025 is the drop dead date for final approval.
I don't want to get to that point, but.
It's
but
good
yeah,
to know.
But yes.
John, could you, before we get into a detailed discussion, could you give us an update on the role of the consulting firm? And if it changed, let us know. More importantly, I think with the fact that a new person's coming on, we don't need to wait to update or agree on what we have now in terms of a draft. We have, in my opinion, a fairly comprehensive and complete draft that we can work with to make the presentation to the public to get comments. I don't know that we need to have anything from the consultants before that. We're certainly able to do that ourselves. And in fact, the only thing I disagree with is your suggestion that we work in small teams, if you will. The law is clear. The power and the duty of the commission is to prepare, and it's the commission, not individuals on a commission, but the whole commission working together should be able to complete a review of the document we now have in draft, make changes at a workshop meeting, bring them to council, or bring them to commission and vote. And I think that would be a complete process. There's no reason to have consultants in there for that. And more importantly, there's no reason to have a whole bunch of individual groups that might be compromised because after having done the work, they would be viewed as having a bias and therefore not independent or able to vote on the document. So you might have 3/4 of the commission not able to vote.
So I'll respond to all of sort of, I think it was 3 things in there that I pulled out, if it weren't 3 or 4. The first was sort of the status of the engagement between the consultant team and the town and the Planning Commission in this particular process of updating the comprehensive plan. Where we have left off since the end of 2023, I do agree that we have substantial amount of framework that does not set us back as far as moving forward. So as my recommendation now in engaging with the principal with our firm is to ensure that the goals and objectives, because there were comments addressed by the Planning Commission from some of the goals and objectives, I would want that, for lack of a better word, solid and bulletproof before we push that out to the community. And so
Well, I agree, but we can do that. We don't need consultants to do
No,
that.
so however, the next stage of that, the consultant still would need to work on preparing the body of the actual document.
Fine.
And so that is what I'm saying, that I would want them to have at least an engagement session to hear this solid goals and objectives. That way that marries into the language that they're preparing in the formal document.
So just a question on that? Go ahead, Ron.
Has the consulting firm identified a new lead?
So they have not formally, he has the person, but we have not had a chance to set a good time yet to engage yet. But it will still be someone within the firm. So we aren't granting someone outside of the firm, and there's still project team members who were part of the process with Blake, who are familiar with some of that language. So we aren't reaching outside of the principal firm.
So your
So-
idea for the consultant is that their job is to take all of our comments and what we want and write it. They're not going to be changing what we all as commissioners agree should be in the plan and what should not be in the plan.
So the goals and objectives is really the framework of what should not change, in my opinion, moving forward once we bring that new person on. Because at this particular time, that is what sets the standards in all of the further strategies that are listed. So, for example, I'll just be really quickly here. One of the goals and objectives that's listed under the population element, I would want that new person who's to understand what that really means and ensure them picking up this document saying, what's this potential strategies that they would recommend based on what's the discussions that have already been had regarding that.
John, we can do that, but again, we need to have a workshop so we agree
Correct.
on what's here. We have our workshop, you can invite the consultant to sit in, not have a role, but understand what's going on, get his background, his or her background up, and then they take what we agree with and get it ready for public display. We need the public comments, and we'll get those with the document that we agree on,
So that-
not the
that was-
consultants.
That was my point of addressing Ms. Hennessy's point is, I want, because we received these comments on addressing some of the actual goals and objectives have been modified since the last time we were together as a group. that
I'll tell you
workshop-
that even though I got them last night, I went through them. I've got some minor comments, which we can cover in a workshop in 10 minutes.
I understand it. What I'm saying is I would like that workshop to happen to make sure that I get formal admission from you guys that we support this document. We support these goals and objectives. I've received your comments, but I want that to be on the record as far as a workshop so that we know that these would be moving forth to present to the community.
Okay, because I went through it also, and you received comments from most, if not all of us, and most of the comments were reflected, not all. Some things that we all agreed should be eliminated are still in there, so there are still some things that need to be
Yeah, the things.
adjusted.
And so those are some of the things that I would want to talk through the workshop of, some of the things that I thought have a little bit more discussion of the reason why I didn't include that in this revised document from a staff perspective. So that was the
That's why
rationale.
we need a workshop.
So, correct, precisely.
Everybody's
So-
in agreement.
Yeah, let's do it.
So you mentioned one
We're
other
in
thing.
wild,
and you mentioned-
wild agreement.
You mentioned one other thing, Mr. Capelli, regarding the subcommittees and breaking down. And so I'll just kind of share my thought pattern there. All of this will still come back before the full commission for review. The rationale for the subcommittees is that once we get the language written, I feel that we can advance as far as the
The
technical
language
aspect.
is there, John. They've already made comments. What
can I-
changes, if any, that will be proposed are maybe correct some language that is unclear, maybe it's duplicative, but there's no major changes that I saw in a document based on what's been drafted.
I'm talking about once we get the actual full document drafted. So the
We're going to
full-
have to change it for whatever comments we receive from the public, too.
It'll be at the pleasure of the commission. If you guys don't want to do subcommittees, I'm just giving you my staff recommendation. I think it helps the process. We've seen it work with other ordinances, amendments, that small teams can and we can present elements at a time, so that subcommittee can be working on an element, and then we can present 3 or 4 of those at a time, so that you all have the time to discuss all those in a group setting.
Andy, one of the things that I've heard, and I agree with, and I feel the same way, is that we were having a tough time getting ownership of this document, because it was always, we were responding to the consultant. He was coming back and giving us his putting his spin on it. One of the when John and I talked about this, one of the things we can do is if we break it down and break down into groups of 3, we can have groups of 3 who do that. Then the groups the groups, we have a roundtable where the groups then bring their recommendation, and the entire committee will do it. But the dynamics of getting ownership is to and allow dialogue and discussion is better with smaller groups who then present it as.
Baloney.
Oh, thank you
Baloney.
very much, Andy.
That is, I'm sorry, but that is absolutely the wrong approach.
Andy,
The commission's got to do this, not individuals.
that's what we're talking about, the commission.
Right, not individuals on the
Oh,
commission.
so we did it wrong when we did the tree commission. We should have done the the tree ordinance with the entire commission as opposed to a subgroup.
It's got nothing to do with the tree ordinance.
Andy, I think the point here is, I think what they're trying to do, and I could go either way on it, so I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I think if you want to do subcommittees, there's nothing wrong with that. It's saying 3 people can go through, it's like, we had some small meetings when I sent comments from 4 people, we consolidated all those comments based on individual meetings to help make it easier. It doesn't mean they're final. The whole commission still has to talk about each one. If we want to do subcommittees, it's fine. Everyone can still vote on it. There's no bias issues here.
You've got a majority of the commission already submitting comments. The rest of us don't need to be part of the submission process. It's already there. Now we can make comments on that and move forward. If you want to change your comments, you
We've already done
can.
this subcommittee thing. You think we've already gone beyond that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, much beyond it.
I think
So
the
it was
next-
just a, I'm sorry,
Next
sorry,
step
sorry.
is a workshop. I think we were
Yeah.
all in agreement on that. So
Let's
why
do
don't we,
that.
why don't we use that as our goal and arrange for that?
So the
And I
next,
think some of us have put through, it looks like, I saw 3 responses so far, all of us available Monday morning. Does that work?
so that doesn't align with the current schedule, but we'll put a workshop date out to make sure that we have the commission available as soon as possible.
And
Right now that-
maybe
yeah.
if the lead,
Even, in my opinion, even if the consultant is unable to be there, I still want to at least get that going.
Yeah,
So-
I
or
wouldn't
they could
worry about
send-
the
or they
consultants.
could send one of the other staff.
But I think, again, going back to the requirement to finish it, I mean, it's not like we've got to get it done in 90 days.
Right.
No.
But
So
we
maybe
want to
put-
do it right.
So maybe put out a few dates so that we can get
Sure,
everybody,
sure.
because you don't want to pick a
Sure.
date that people can't.
That was.
I think
the
March
purpose.
is maybe a too lofty a goal.
March is too lofty a goal to accomplish what?
To have it written and presented to the town council.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Public.
No, no, I think some did that, they were assuming March of 2025.
Please no, please no.
Please, no. No, I think he was saying, wasn't that to the public in
So
March?
No, it's a
to at
council.
least begin.
Oh, that's definitely
So
aggressive.
February and March, being able to have something that we can at least present to the public as something, it might still require some changes, but I think something as far as a draft that we can feel comfortable with to present
Right.
to the public
And
by
we have
March.
the basis now.
Here's where I am on this. The consultant's role has become almost a moot point. The consultant has fought us every step of the way. And I don't feel that we have been listened to or that our input has been considered very, very well as part of this document. So we took it upon ourselves. I think we have a good working document now. We've all been through it recently, thoroughly. However, it makes sense for us to get together as a group and make sure that all of the changes that we worked so hard on the last couple of weeks have been incorporated into this document. Whether the new lead consultant is there as a part of it, I only want him or her there if they're going to be supportive.
But, I mean, we do need to have them get oriented because they're going to be rewriting the body.
Yes, but again, work
So,
with us,
so that was
not
my,
against
that was my
us.
comments of the structure of the document, these principles, goals, and objectives, making sure that those are not changing. Those have changed since September, so I want to make sure that those are not changing when we engage the next project lead.
That sounds like a good idea.
And I'm okay if we work as subgroups or as a full group. Let's not rush
The
the
dynamics are a lot
process.
better in small groups, in my opinion.
I would agree, but
Okay.
I'm willing to go
So,
either way.
so we're going to have a working session for the purpose of finalizing the goals and objectives so that we know we have something solid we can take forward.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to support what Madeline said about the consultant. I think a lot of us felt we were being fought, that he wasn't hearing what the community was saying, that Kiowa is. We are not. They were putting a square peg in a round hole. They had a template. Anyway, so we're concerned that this new person isn't going to be try and do the same thing.
No,
Well, I would-
we've shared those sentiments with the principal, and so that's part of this reason of sort of resetting, if you will.
I was just going to say, you know, I think there's the opportunity for much better collaboration. So obviously, we're going to have a new consultant lead, and so
Yeah, the question is, I think we-
go into it with a positive attitude that this new person's going to help us get the job done across the finish line.
I think the question was it consultants or that consultant? What was the problem?
We'll know.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
Don't know either. We'll find out.
So that concludes, like I said, I'll have a date proposed to the
Perfect.
commission that works for a workshop.
Okay, any other questions for John on the Kiowa?
Yeah, give us a time when there's or enough options for a meeting time.
I'll post several so we can have multiple scheduled in advance.
And do me a favor, don't change the material anymore, especially not 24 hours before the meeting. We've got a draft, let's work with that. We can make changes to that. We don't need another draft of anything you hear or understand before the workshop.
So
We've got to get this ready to go public. We need the public comments to see that we're on the right track. If we're not, your 25 date may
Yeah, so I would,
a little bit more.
so Andy, I would agree with that to the extent that we have all of our information in there. But I think right now, all of our information is not in there. Yours is not, mine is not, other people's may or may not be. But before we go to the public, I would like to have all 7 of us, have all of our comments in there, inclusive of
We're
you.
going to do
Yeah,
it at the
no,
workshop.
my
But I don't want to
comments
go to the
are,
public and me still have not, my 3 comments are still not in the document.
my comments are not substantive.
My comments might be.
Yours, well, the comments that were submitted were changed, and they're not reflected in the draft we received yesterday. But, I mean, well, that is one of the points you discuss.
Okay.
And we get the commission to agree.
So, John, can you commit to Andy not to change the document?
So part of today's session was to get a clean document from the last time we met with those who have submitted things since that meeting. And so that document represented today will not change until we have our workshop.
Okay, so the
And
document will not
John-
change. We'll have the workshop where we're going to work to get consensus by the,
'Cause
to go forward.
Right?
And
Okay.
one final question. Is there a place now that the public can go to look at this document, even in its draft, in its current
No.
draft form?
Why would,
I wouldn't do
I'm
that.
asking if one exists. I'm not suggesting
So-
that one be
So
posted.
just to be
you're right.
to be straightforward, this document as published as part of this agenda is online. It's not posted in our comprehensive plan website of where we've been tracking all of the edits. So it's not there, but this as part of today's meeting, the information is online.
Because there was a lot of pushback from things that were in the draft thing all over IKEA. Oh, my God, I won't go into specific points, but there were things that all of us on the commission said shouldn't be in there, but it was out there and the community was getting upset about it.
In draft form, so I think that.
And it's important they know we all didn't agree to that.
But I'm saying it's in draft form, so anytime that we publish that, we all know that it's in draft form. Until there's a final document, nothing's final that it's been voted on upon. So even with the many changes that we've done in previous ordinances, when you think back to the tree, we've had several iterations. All those are posted online, even though those have evolved through several meetings. So that it allows, from the planning staff perspective, it allows the community to at least track the evolution of the document, opposed to just seeing here, where did this derive? So.
John, we've had a number of FOIA questions about releasing documents, releasing information. And it's been very clear in the past, I don't know if we're going to get changes in interpretation, but the commission is allowed to have workshops that need not be public. and need not be publicized until we're ready to go.
No, that's not right.
It's not true.
Drafts,
If you were meeting
not a meeting.
with a quorum,
Public.
it's public, it should have an agenda, and it should be, publicized.
Right. But I'm talking about beyond that. You have a meeting, and let's assume that this workshop produces a document that everybody's satisfied except for a couple points. We can hold a few members of the committee in that instance in a discussion about those points, and they can bring it back at a later date. That does not need to be made public.
If there are at least 4 of us, it does. If there are fewer than 4, it doesn't.
It's fewer than 4. It does not.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
But if workshops are public.
May I ask a question, John? Go ahead.
No,
No,
it's,
So the packet that we received back in mid-December had, besides the previous draft of the comp plan or Kiowa Next, had these 2 other packets of information. And what, I'm not quite sure, what was the role of those, or what were, I mean, some of them are informative, others are possibly suggesting strategies. So was this from the consultant or from you, or?
So at our previous meeting, or previous meetings and workshops, one of the things that that was repetitively as part of this process to ensure that there was some data that coupled with the qualitative input that we received early on in the process. So one of those documents responded in trying to provide some of the quantitative data assessments that are out there that the consultants and their team, Kimley Horn and LS3P, provided by reaching out to the different points of contact for data. The other document was a mapping, an imagery mapping exhibit that would begin to look at what could be placed into the document as far as being able to communicate what those goals and objectives and strategies would be. Because those goals and objectives have been continued to be modified, I did not include those as part of today's sort of moving forward, and those would need to be revised to kind of reflect what those new goals and objectives are. But it's really as a contextual sort of complement to the goals and objectives.
Yeah, I think we should make it clear that the statistical data was fine, the demographic data, but that MAPS thing, I think a lot of us had trouble with because it seemed to be leading towards strategies that the commission did not agree with. You know, they had all those fancy maps with the circles in your 5-minute walking radiuses and talking about, you know, it was leading to things that I don't think there's agreement on the commission that that's the way we wanted to go. So we were concerned about that.
So I had a discussion with the consultant team on that. One of those maps really should not have been included in there, which would have been the one that you saw with the 5-minute walk radiuses across the entire island. I did recommend that particular map that they produced regarding the not commercial, but the resort activities center of where Night Heron Park, West Beach, Freshfields, of where there's cottages and more resort-like activities. That's a planning tool that's been used to show the radius of what is able from a walkability standpoint in biking. So where not someone may get in a car who lives across the street from the Night Heron Park, they could feel comfortable walking. That's not something that being pushed in agendas or anything. I think I hear where you're coming from during those discussions, but I just wanted to be clear that those maps aren't necessarily final. Those won't be included until we get.
It's not a question of final or not. These maps are not going to appear if there's nothing in there, in the plan itself, that supports an objective or a goal.
When I say final, the reason why I said because of the objectives have have been modified, we want all of those objectives, and not even once we get even to the strategies, those strategies need to be able to be communicated.
Yeah,
if there's-
that's what
if
we got to
there's a-
focus on.
Yeah. so
Getting the
that-
strategy and the goals and the objectives.
Okay. Any more?
Yeah, I'm following up on Joanne's point. I had just snapped some of the demographic data. And since a lot of that data was inconsistent with kind of general public perceptions about size of household, growth of population, et cetera, if this is accurate demographic data, I think it's important that it be included in the actual plan. So it was the,
I want to be clear. When we begin to write the body of the document, those things will go into the body of the document.
Okay.
Where we are today, if you look at the structure of our current comprehensive plan, it goes through the list of each element, and it'll tell you the existing conditions. Those existing conditions lay out, this is our community character, this is our population demographic, this is what our housing makes up. And then after that, it'll come with, this is how we address those things as far as needs and goals would follow. And so right now, what I'm saying is those goals and objectives that are outlined, we know what those are because we kind of understand what the needs of the community are. Those specific data points, those help tell the story. Those help inform the community of why these goals are listed. It helps inform the plan. So those will be included in the final
Okay.
plan. Yes.
all right.
And they'll be updated to the closest or the latest information we have before it goes into the plan. It also will support an analysis the way the plan requires it. And one of the suggestions Larry made was obviously to get more detail on the visitors, on the part-timers, on rentals, et cetera, et cetera. So the detail that will go in will be based on what the
Available data.
objectives are. Right.
So thinking big picture here, we do have to freeze in time a set of data. So we can't necessarily continue to use
Exactly.
2024, but we do have to freeze in a moment in time, which would be the most recent sort of data that we do have, and use that to inform our plan.
Yeah, I will tell you, one of my changes, one word, change aging to changing.
Say that one more time?
When you get to population, you'll find it.
I think evolving is better.
I've been getting better.
Okay, any other questions for John? Okay, so our next, so we're looking forward to the workshop, and sounds like you've got a motivated group here. Next item of business is the election of 2024 officers. As consistent with our rules of procedure on the first meeting of the year, the commission elects two officers. So I will open up the floor for the nomination of chairman of the committee. And I will start that Bill Dowdy has approached me and is interested in being chair again. Bill is not here today, obviously. And he asked if I would nominate him to continue as chair for 2024. And I therefore nominate Bill Dowdy for the chair position for 2024.
I would second that.
Okay. Any other nominees? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Second one is the approval of a vice chair. And so I will ask, are there any nominations for vice chairman?
I'd like to nominate Larry Iwan again to succeed as vice chair. And with all he's learned this year, I assume he'll be in an excellent position to continue on and serve us again as vice chair.
I'm reminded of the comments Bluto made in his movie where he said, "Yeah, I've been in college 8 years, 8 wasted years." accept.
You become a scholar now in terms of
right.
managing a meeting.
Second,
We'll have toga parties. So any other nominees for vice chair?
second.
Oh, I got a second, that's right. All right, we've been nominated and seconded. Any other nominations? Okay, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstains?
Abstain.
Don't want to make it complicated.
Let's hope somebody.
Okay, so with that, we can go to correspondence and council comments from John.
No, we have procedures.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep. I wanted to get ahead of myself again. See, I'm still learning, I'm trying to figure this out.
Wasted 8 years.
I faced it 8 years. So, so now we have again, per our charter, we have to approve rules of procedure. Isn't that, it's kind of redundant, approving rules of procedure on the rules of procedure? Yeah, I guess that is. So anyway, so the first question is, do you have copies of the rules of procedure that were provided in the packet? So the first question is, are there any, do we have nominations for, do we have
Motion.
motion to accept the Town of Keel Island Planning Commission Rules of Procedure that you have in your packet?
Second.
Okay. Do we have any comments, any discussion on these procedures?
Yes.
We have the staff comments first.
Oh, staff comments.
So what's before you, Planning Commission Rules of Procedure, what you'll note is there's really only one thing that staff has outlined to needs to be changed. However, the version that you see does have a correction from our previous time that we amended. And so what I would recommend is that the only change, I don't know, this is published, we have to revise that. If, I was thinking about.
Amended, even, it's not.
Yeah. That's kind of,
We can operate under,
I mean, it's on the agenda.
okay. Just, I was kind of making sure I had the procedural kind of guidance there. There's only one technical change, which would be from, on the last page, which would be changing the approval date. That would be from February to 2020, to January 17th, 2024. However, Mr. Capelli has pointed out that there's one, maybe two sections that carried over from our previous time that are incorrectly printed in there. So I don't want to.
when that, there were a number of changes made last year that are not reflected in the current draft because you used the prior year. The times of the meetings are reflected incorrectly. The following values, the last item should be deleted. Section 4G should provide a proper detail, et cetera.
Would you go for one?
Well, let me propose a suggestion,
Bring it
and
back
that is
at our-
to.
We can bring it back at our next
Can
meeting.
we table this motion until next meeting, when we get a clean copy with all the changes that basically were reflected? We can operate under the 23 rules until we get the new clean version next meeting.
That was my next step, yeah.
Can we?
We can do that, right?
Yeah, okay.
So moved. I've moved to amend
Move to
the
table.
motion. To table this,
For date certain.
table this until next meeting when we get a clean copy.
Any discussion on the,
We need a second.
Second.
okay, now, any discussion on that? No discussion? Vote on tabling this until the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining?
You want to get out of here at 4 o'clock, don't you?
We got, okay, now we can go to the staff comments and council comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've shared with you just a monthly update, and I'll hit some highlight points of that document regarding just a few points. We'll continue with our marsh management planning. Our next month, February, will be our 1 year since it's been adopted. You all are familiar that we've broken that work grouping down into sort of 3 subcommittees, and each of those subcommittees have been sort of still working. We've had a lot of discussions, a lot of meetings, and some progress has been made, but we'll continue to meet this 2024 calendar year to try to accomplish that first phase of things, bringing, 1, looking at impervious surfaces, 2, being the Kiowa River Bridge project. Maybe you're familiar with that because that's been updated through our town council meetings, and continue to communicate the importance of marsh management to our community in different arenas. And so that's an ongoing process, no significant sort of change there. At a previous council meeting, this is regarding Kiowa Island Parkway. That will begin to see some installation at the intersection. So I just wanted to make that you guys aware. Right now, there are temporary sort of bollards there of creating that free-flowing outbound lane. Staff is working with our contractors to establish when that'll officially begin, but I think between end of February, beginning of March, we'll begin to see mobilization for that particular pork chop to make that dedicated left turn onto Beachwalker leaving the island, and that free-flowing outbound lane. Those are only sort of changes affecting the outbound lane. And then also, council has introduced last year Beachwalker Beachwalker Drive.
John, before you leave the intersection?
Yeah.
Is a pork chop just a concrete thing that shows where those cones are, replaces
Correct.
where those cones are now?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
The landscaping improvements to Beachwalker Drive, once I get confirmation from my counterparts, we'll share that information to the community on when those potential installs will happen formally, which will be landscaping. I did want to highlight on the development projects. MUSC, we've continued to meet with their project team. They have not formally submitted to the town yet, but I think they're nearing, just going back and forth through the permitting process, understanding the next steps. So hopefully within the next month or 2, we would probably see those formal plans submitted from MUSC for site plan review. The other projects that staff gave an update at a recent town council meeting regarding Beachwalker Drive, the status of those particular projects, the Upper Beachwalker, Lower Beachwalker, and also Kiowa Island Golf Resort at Night Heron Park. All of those continue to be under site plan review. There are 2 off-island projects, Ando West. There's no kind of status update today on where that project lies. And then the Medical Village, that's been another project brewing just on Bessie Carrison that's been highly discussed in the community. That will go before public Planning and Public Works Committee next week for Charleston County for consideration. So if you guys want to encourage the community to attend that meeting, I encourage you to do that. The other updates that I'll give are specifically to our schedule for the rest of the year. Not for the rest of the year, but outside of the comprehensive plan, the next few things that the Planning Commission will need to tackle. So our town council retreat has been scheduled for the first week of February 8th and 9th. Prior to that, some things that left over from the end of 2023, moving in the first quarter of 2024. Council has given some direction to, which I kind of alluded to in our email. One would be establishing term limits for Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeal members. And the other would be looking at a few other sections in our zoning code. At our retreat, planning staff, as you all recall, last year, with the attempt to have our comprehensive plan done, anticipated to be wrapped up. The next goal was for us to do a holistic review of the zoning code. And so that holistic review of the zoning code will really look at specific sections. Since I've been on staff, even prior to being in the county, our code has not been comprehensively updated in quite some time. And so this is a time now, and I feel appropriate for us to be right after the comprehensive plan is done, to really go in and do a holistic comprehensive review. Are there ordinances that are out of date? Are there ordinances that are inconsistent? Things that we want to make essentially modernized to today's Kiowa standard. So that particular process will kick off of introducing that to the community. Anticipate to bring on consultant to help us with that, but that'll be the next big sort of project that the planning department and planning commission works through. I said I hit the highlights, but I said more than a little bit, so I'll stop there.
I do have one question that, in reading the, some comments, that the town council was sending back the tree ordinance.
Thank you for reminding me. I know it's something I left off there.
Yeah, it was very much on my mind.
Because you put so much hard time and work in that. So the town council did have public hearing and first reading of the tree ordinance at our January meeting. Those comments that were received throughout our workshop and the commission were presented, and I saw the comments that you all sent in regards to the response of that particular meeting. In my opinion, I think council latched on to one particular aspect of the less restrictive versus more restrictive, and didn't really get a comprehensive, that deep dive of the work that was done and back and forth that ended up in our landing spot. So they have requested that we work through some more amendments. And so I've received some comments directly from council. So I'll be working through a draft, and I'll send that back to council. We have scheduled right now for that not to come back before the planning commission.
Okay,
but
that was my
if-
question. So that's between you and council right now?
Right now, so yes. But if it does be remanded back to the planning commission, I'll let you guys know. But right now, council is beginning to just introduce comments to see if those amendments could work in moving it forward.
I did get a call on this, and I've talked to some on council, and we did do this quickly, and if they had some valid concerns, and I think some of the concerns that were expressed to me are valid, if they can do it at the council level, great. If they need to send it back to us, so be it.
And I'll share with a few of those things so that you guys are aware. The substantive comments came around, one, the Tree Preservation Board and its role and responsibilities. I know we had some discussion on that here at the Planning Commission level. So that would be something that we'll kind of be looking in more detail, exactly what triggers or what application process would warrant the Tree Preservation Board to be part of that tree removal process. The others were something that we actually started with that was removed, which was the involving a process approval for grand trees. So we did start with that, and that ended up becoming removed of us, anything over 24 inches being removed. Members of council requested that be a more scrutinized process. And so once we publish a draft, I'll share that with because I know you guys have worked hard and put your hard work into that. So,
John, if I recall correctly, I think probably the biggest problem they had with it was that we were very verbal in the ordinance about being less restrictive than the ARB. And they didn't mind us being less restrictive, but it should not necessarily be an objective of the town's tree ordinance to be there.
So I had that discussion with one of the council members, and I felt that language was just one of the talking points during our discussion, but it was never really a goal of the subcommittee or during our discussions. I know that was something that came up, but it was never where we started, if I'm accurate in saying that. We never started saying, hey, we want to preclude. It was more about the process of
What I think the objective was not to make it to be the most efficient for the citizens.
Correct, yeah.
And not to have to sort between two conflicting ordinances. Or
But duplicating, sort of a
duplicating, right, standards, that's better.
So those conclude, unless you guys had other questions, kind of conclude my,
Okay. Any?
John, would you, and I don't know if it was an oversight or what, but the material that went to the town council with respect to the ordinance, the tree ordinance, had pre-information, which on more than one occasion indicated that it applied to all properties. It included single-family homes, and everything else that we agreed not to have was in that material. Now, I don't know whether they focused on it, whether anybody looked at it, but it was inconsistent with the language in the draft ordinance. So I don't know where the inconsistency started or how it got there, but it was there.
The language in what I call the summary sheet was consistent with the ordinance. So what I felt that council latched onto was the comments presented about less restrictive and more restrictive.
It said all
that-
properties, and then in another section, it talked about applying it to single family,
So
and then the timing, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll leave it alone. So the summary did say all properties, because the ordinance does apply to all properties except for where we mentioned that single family is an exception to that rule.
We changed that language in the ordinance. We changed that language. Took out all properties and put in multifamily.
No, to all the ordinance reads all non-single family residential is how it reads.
Is that the way it got changed? I thought we agreed on
yeah,
none,
so-
on
so-
multifamily only, but anyway, it was inconsistent with the ordinance, the way the preamble, or whatever you want to call it, was presented.
John, can I ask a question on site plan reviews, since those are in here? There's been just so much going on in the community about the various site plans and what the procedures are for approving them. I feel sorry for you. I think you have so much on your plate, and, I think you're doing yeoman's work on all of this. I think there's concern that maybe we need some more help in making sure that some of these plans conform to ordinances. There have been a lot of questions posed by the community. I think we can't be radio silent. We have to answer some of these questions, whether is the pier, which isn't really a dock or a boardwalk or whatever, is that consistent? Maybe it is, but we need to answer some of those questions. I went back and listened to the October 22nd meeting where we approved some of these preliminary plats for those of us who were at that meeting. And my recollection was that we had approved, this is on Upper Beach Walker and some things on Lower Beach Walker. On Upper Beach Walker, we'd approved a road access and easements, and that we were going to see it again. And there was a lot of back and forth at that meeting. But I would suggest you all go to roughly the 50-minute mark of that meeting where then Chairman Peterson asked, we will see this again, won't we? And Ms. Tillerson said yes. So one of my questions is, when do we see those again? And what is our role in approving any further site plans? And then also, I would ask you, I know you've received a lot of emails with some very specific questions about things that look like they don't conform to our zoning rules, and I would hope those would be answered.
So just on site plan review by our code is administrative approval. If there's something that would trigger outside of that, then that would kick it to whatever review body. Site plan review as it is, based on all of those plans that have been submitted. Our standard review procedures are that the applicant would submit plans, we will issue comments. Applicants will submit plans or documents, will submit comments. So that's a back and forth process until we get an approvable state. Regarding, what was the second?
Well,
regarding
and just
question
on that,
regarding-
doesn't the subdivision regulation come into play there? Because Upper Beach Walker's subdivision, and it says any part of a subdivision that is under review does come back to the Planning Commission.
Site plan review. So the subdivision regulations regarding Upper Beach Walker were reviewed to a final plat, a preliminary plat, those things that would come before Planning Commission. Site plan review would not come before Planning Commission.
So do we see these things again?
Site plan review, right now, as it is, it's a site plan that's been submitted, so that would not come back before Planning Commission. Regarding, you mentioned the boardwalk, not boardwalks, but the boardwalks that are down by the Cape, that's what you're referencing. So
What did you call them?
the bulwarks that are
Works.
the crossovers, those we have received a lot of inquiry regarding those. Staffers went on site to look at those. Actually, what you all may see momentarily, probably by the end of this week, crews mobilizing to remove portions of those. Due to the active beach state now, there are non-compliance. That's measured from the actual dune line. A recent storm that we did have, you all know that there was a ton of erosion that occurred along the beachfront. And so that erosion now has impacted not just that particular section of the island, but a number of boardwalks. And so our staff, our Public Works Department, planning, we've all met with the project team there. And so they will be making some construction activity to make sure that those do become compliant based on the location of those. So we haven't publicized that to the community as far as that construction crews, because that's something that they would need to still mobilize the dates and times and all those things, but that should be something that's coming very shortly.
Okay, and as to all the questions about compliance on Upper Beach Walk or with some of the zoning things, whether it's buffers, whether it's the church parcel, is it a flag lot or isn't? If it's a flag lot, then the access road can just access that lot. If it's not a flag lot, the road can access other things, but that changes the lot coverage requirements. I mean, there were a lot of questions, and I think they just need to be answered.
I mean, we can meet if you want to meet. We can discuss those.
I had mentioned this in an email, and it's maybe opening up a can of worms. But there have been a lot of legitimate questions that have been posed by the community, and perhaps some of us working with you could put together the more common questions and answers that, and Joe, I would ask our attorney to chime in as well. I know that there are several people in the room who have had to answer a lot of questions that they didn't necessarily want to have to answer at any given point in time. So I don't want to put you in that position. It's a lot of extra work. But radio silence probably isn't a good option. So is that something we can even realistically think about, is providing some questions and answers that address the most common difficult questions that the community is
That was part of staff's attempt at our previous council meeting to give the community a clear update on those particular projects. So we did that at our town council meeting last month. And I think that's now will become a regular thing to give a regular update on substantial projects and things of the community, so that community can be aware of the status of those particular items.
All right, it's a good step forward. I
Because we
just,
get asked.
Sorry?
yeah.
We get asked these questions, and
Yeah.
we don't have answers, and but you're on the planning commission, why don't you know? So it would be helpful for us to know.
Yeah, you as I've directed, you can always shoot those questions to me. I responded to Ms. Kay sending a question to me earlier, so that you guys can always send questions to me.
I'm only thinking that if each of us is getting questions from our friends and neighbors, that perhaps having a central place to go to that provides a consistent set of responses, an accurate set of responses, might be helpful. It's something to think about. I really am not piling on any additional workload.
Well, I've heard you, and so we'll make a plan of action.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Okay, any public comments at the end of the meeting? Please state your name and your address, please.
I just have a question, I guess, for my own curiosity. The boardwalk that is now half destroyed at the Cape, it appeared to be in violation of DHEC rules and regulations to begin with. I don't know if you agree with that or not, John, but I've gone back and forth with quite a few people in the know, including Amy Armstrong and company at Skelp, and they seem to think that it was built in violation of DHEC regulations. Well, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have commissioner comments. We'll start down at Ron, we'll left to right. Ron?
Nothing to add.
Joanne?
Nothing further.
Adeline?
Nope, thank you.
Andy?
Just one. As a follow-up to John's report on the Marsh Management Committee, or Subcommittee in this case, we will be meeting tomorrow on the bridge access and the marsh protection or preservation in that area, hopefully to receive a report that gives us some understanding of what the regulators have told us we can or can't do. So that is getting closer. And once we get the information of what can be done, the plan was to have the public understand and see the proposal that we would make in terms of a boardwalk, a deck, call it what you want, or nothing, depending on what we were able to do. So that'll be forthcoming once we get the regulatory input. And I should say regulatory and legal in a couple cases.
Okay.
That's it.
Luke?
Nothing for me, thank you.
My only comment is I'm glad to hear that Andy's so experienced working with subgroups, subcommittee groups, because you'll be really helpful next week when we break up into smaller groups. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Anybody abstaining?